Before we start this podcast, I want to say that every project I have pretty much has a village behind it, and this one is no exception. I want to thank the patrons who stepped in on my Kickstarter to really make sure that this got off the ground. Denise Grady, Caden White Wadham, Amanda Peak, Todd A. Davis, Jay Grant, and Corey Watson. Without you guys, I wouldn't be sitting here talking with the awesome guest that I'm about to talk to. Thank you so much. What's your book about? You said it's poetry.
Time capsule. It's a time capsule, and it's basically all of my poetry from ages 16 and 19 that my dad pushed me to basically self-publish on Lulu. And as I've gotten older, I ordered a copy for myself, and I'm rereading it, and I'm like, oh my God, this really is a time capsule. I was giving myself advice, essentially, but it's a whole rabbit hole. I won't go into it too deep.
Welcome to It's Your Loss podcast, where raw stories of resilience and healing are told, all while uncovering and destigmatizing the diverse symptoms of loss.
Welcome back to the podcast. If you missed last month's episode, well, it's your loss. I'm your host, Michael LeBlanc, and I am here with Selena Wolf, who I'd like to say I know this person very well, but they saw what I was doing on Facebook and decided that they had to get a part of this. Selena, how you doing today?
I am doing really well. I'm actually just really honored and blessed to be here and be able to appear on my first ever podcast. And I'm hoping to be able to expand my talents and gifts and just kind of grow alongside others of like minds.
That's the best way to do it, is to just get invited or to find somebody and just kind of like vibe with them. That's how I got started on my first podcast appearance with this really chill dude named Steven Rhodes. I know, not Steven Seagal. Nobody famous. Steven Rhodes. He's got a wonderful podcast that I'm going to actually be interviewing him tomorrow. I don't know when his is going to come out, but it was such a ramshackle thing. There was no ads. It was just conversation. There was no real subject except for we were both on TikTok at the time and we were just trying to connect, talk about the experience. And then from there, I've been on a Star Trek podcast. I was on this one podcast that mostly brings people who are feminists and against the patriarchy. And I had no idea what I was going to talk about because I was like, it could go a bunch of ways. Like, I'm actually relatively a pretty neutral guy, but as much as fighting for, the rights of humanity on all different, subjects and platforms. And so, I don't know, we just had a really good conversation. So yeah, I'm hoping, you get comfortable, if you're comfortable with this, if there's ever anything else that you want to come back on and you're like, hey, I don't feel like I talked enough about the deep, dark things that have happened to me in my life. I need to talk to you more. If you feel that way.
It's a trilogy. It's a trilogy. That's all. I mean, it's going to be a book. It's going to be a lot of things. Right now, I'm just trying to get to college. That's my goal, full sail. And might have to push it back, but I'm going to get there. Promise.
Hey, well, I like the optimism that we're starting off here. That's nice. So let's just completely destroy that. And let me ask you, Selena, what have you lost?
My will to live, my self-respect, my family, my car, my job, just my self-esteem. What haven't I lost? I took and I deconstructed my life to the very core, to the very bare essentials. I was never homeless. And yet last year I went on this spirit journey, the very depths of my darkness, to find what was left after I lost it all. And at the end of it all, I found God. And I did not expect to come full circle to be like, man, I'm a hippie Christian. But maybe there are aspects of me, there's 3 aspects, but maybe that aspect is what saved me more than anything else.
Wow. Okay, that's a great sentence to start with. I mean, it's multi-layered, obviously. Okay, so one of the things that I'll just read a little quick snippet of what you shared with me, and it's got pieces and parts of what you were saying. Family members, aunt, uncle, grandpa, jobs. It says in here that you were lost in addiction, and it says spiritually, which it sounds like that you lost something and then you came back to it in the vacuum that you were like creating for yourself. Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well,
it's the essence of being the number 333.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, very proud Christian on I guess would be my right side. My father, he's an old goat. And I won't go into detail right now, but I was with the duality of Christianity, you're supposed to honor both sides. And it was
Yeah.
like I was being ripped in half and I could never choose a path fully. I had to forge my own, which is what I've done.
Okay. That's great. Well, let's figure out. Let's hear about that story. So let's out of the things that we've mentioned, we've got the family members, the job. You said your self-respect. Where do you feel like your first big loss was that started you on the road of where you thought you needed to start reconstruction?
The night that I, after 15 years, went out to a bar to go meet up with my high school sweetheart. And he's making $100,000 a year. He shows up in a Denali and he's lost about 75 pounds.
Wow.
I'm the biggest I've ever been. My son's on disability and I'm working at McDonald's at the time with purple hair. And he proceeds to make fun of me for my backpack purse. We have 2 drinks and he's like, well, I'm going to dip out. And I'm like, yeah, I hate myself.
Oh,
That realization alone is what led me that night to my first relapse after 15 years on my DOC.
okay. A lot of people go to self-medication and drugs when it comes to dealing with, sudden changes in life, loss, especially if it's kind of like that thing where they say that if you have a weak spot in a balloon and you squeeze on the balloon, it's going to be the weak spot that always pops out first. It's kind of the same thing. Like if you've done that before, if you've leaned on that as a crutch before, it's really easy to go back. Um, what were you feeling around that time? Like, because obviously the 5 stages exist in pretty much all sorts of loss. It just varies depending on how deep you are in before the thing got lost. So
That denial, all that, yeah.
yeah. So which one do you think was hitting you the hardest that made you, relapse?
I was in denial to the very fact that my entire life was of my creation. Everything that I tolerated and put up with, it was all my doing. And I did not want to face that. So I thought, hey, I'm going to go have as much fun as I can tonight at the expense of basically everybody around me. That was when I started to embrace the left hand side of myself fully and downhill like very quickly. It was a not a slow moving train wreck. I'll put it that way.
Right. Huh. There's something you said there, and I'm curious about that because I don't know exactly what kind of philosophy that is, or maybe I do. I just don't know the actual term of it. But you said the left hand side of you.
It's very I have a lot of practice and experience. I was kind of brought in hereditarily. My dad kind of came out of the proverbial broom closet whenever I was about 15, and I studied many paths. I practiced many paths, and I kind of became well-rounded. And a left-hand approach would be more self-serving. I don't know if you can imagine the tree of life of the Kabbalah. There's
Hmm.
also a right-hand side, which would be more Christianity terms like mercy and
Okay.
stuff like that. And I try to strive for what I call the Israel regarding middle pillar. And I'm very passionate about my beliefs and what I call a subjective synthesis that I form. And it's kind of, I put it into practice, all sides, to fully know thyself. And that's the 3 aspects.
Okay. All right. So it sounds like you're very much aware of balance, which is ideal, especially if you want to keep mindfulness. So I am not the world's best practicing Buddhist, but that's what I consider myself as. I started off in Christianity while I was in the military, became very aware that my beliefs were bringing me anxiety day to day. And maybe it just hadn't been explained to me right, or it just wasn't fitting me anymore because everybody changes. But I eventually came to feel that Buddhism was the thing that made me feel at peace with this world. And I feel like it started like making me kind of a better person and leaning less on sarcasm and tearing everybody down, which is huge. So was your relapse after you just kind of looked at your your
Um,
boyfriend
to
and
kind
went,
of give you a bigger picture, um, September 4th, 2012, I almost died. Aggravated assault, deadly weapon, knife to my throat. I was in a 6 month living in a situation with my son, which ended in the cops kicking in the door, me in a fetal position. And they gave me a 10-month CPS case for it happening in front of my son. So not only did I almost lose my life, but then I got, in my opinion, punished for it for 10 months because they thought I'd go back to that because apparently a lot of people do. And I was like, wow, no, like when you almost die, like I promise you, I'm not going back to that. I showed this man mercy and I didn't want to testify. I told the assistant DA that as long as he's on his medications, I'm not worried and they can reduce charges and release him. So
yeah,
after 90 days, he got reduced from a felony and released, and he proceeded to stalk me for 2 years. And then about 4 years after that, I'm working at mental health hospital. I'm working at group homes to help my son because he's also on disability. And then I come home one day and my stepdad says, I need to talk to you. In the same house I'm in right now. I step into the laundry room and my son proceeds to tell me that he was molested by the same man that I showed mercy to,
Oh
that
man.
stalked him 2 years. And so I hold it all in for as long as I can. And I'm continuing to be like a mental health technician for others while containing this very dark thing that's killing me.
Hmm.
And the longer I held on to it, the resentment and the rage, you can suppress it, but it's going to come out one way or another. So after sitting on that, of course, I did all the things. I reported it to all the authorities that were needed to. And they said at the time there was a statute of limitations. So since it was not told to me until after that statute, it was however I wanted to proceed. So I carried my son through over 7 mental health hospital stays of his own. I took him to therapy. I went to therapy. I tried medications for 3 years. I also had to carry him through probation. I had to take him to and from because he did assault family violence to my mom, like holes in the wall, classic Kyle, and I get it.
Sure.
I carried him to the best of my ability till he hit about 15, got him through that probation. I helped him. I took him to summer school so he could graduate and he could go to 9th grade, which is where he's at now. And then I stepped away and I deconstructed him. My mom had him. I signed over, he gets SSI. I willingly signed over the payee rights because I knew that I wasn't doing the right things. And I knew that I had to deal with, and I didn't know how to, but I had to deal with what I had suppressed for so long.
Right.
So that's where I was at.
Okay.
I don't know if that answers the question right, but.
No, that actually goes down just a different road, General, and that's perfectly fine. For somebody who, came off the bat and mentioned so much, we could sit here and talk about everything that you've ever lost, but I mean, it sounds like it was that this right here is the story. To keep the conversation, rolling, like maybe like right after the ad read or something, which the ad read is me talking about my own book. But, one day, maybe there will be
Wait, you
like...
have a book? You have a book? I have a poetry book. I'm self-published.
I am also self-published. My book is called Dink, D&D in the Coffin Hold of the USS Enterprise. It's available on my Linktree, which I need to get your Linktree before we leave. That's right. I wrote a book, Dink, spelled D-I-N-Q, D&D in the Coffin Hold of the USS Enterprise, and it's available on Amazon as either a paperback or on Kindle. It's a little bit of fantasy, a whole lot of memoir, and it serves as a stark examination on how being a nerd can save your sanity. Check it out. Leave me a review. So, you said you enjoyed to play Paladins, right?
Yes.
And I found this on paladins.com. I don't know if you've seen this or not. Perhaps maybe you have. This website uses cookies. That's good to know. All right. So, how deep are you into the Paladins mythos? Like, do you know the story?
Very deep. I mean, Atlas, and I think Atlas was that shooter guy. Yeah, I know a lot about it. Drop names, like link them, promise you.
Okay.
I really like Scare. Yeah.
Well, good, because I only just started looking into it because I kind of want to know what my, guests' interests are. And I saw that, this came before Overwatch. This came out
Overwatch.
This came out before Overwatch. Still carries a lot of serious Overwatch vibes, but adds a lot more characters. And
I enjoy it a lot more than Overwatch. I'm just going to see that way.
Okay. Well, because there are so many characters, Paladins thought that this would be important to have a quiz to find out who you were going to be bringing with you into every fight, who's going to be your love, your romance. And I figure since we're almost towards Valentine's Day, which will not be the time that this gets released, but still, we could find that out.
That's awesome.
Yeah, for you, for me, for the audience. So, when opening a fresh game of Paladins, what class are you playing as?
Usually healer.
Usually what?
A healer. I go for healer first, but I wait for everybody else to choose. So read them to me.
So, well, that would put as support because I would do anything to save someone I care about.
There you go. Perfect.
All right. What kind of hobbies do you enjoy? Darkness and destruction, shooting range, meditation, studying the depths of space and time, or skateboarding and snowboarding?
Definitely studying the depths of space and time.
As one does. If your Valentine could paint you a picture, what would it be of? Something with fire to send chills to my heart. Something cute but fierce. They recreate the Starry Night by Van Gogh. Something dark and filled with pain. Something explosive, or they recreate the persistence of memory by Salvador Dali.
Oh, definitely Dolly.
Oh,
I was kind of with Wally and Dolly. I'm all about that.
obviously. And Dali's a trip, whether it's video or
Something
painting.
fun.
Right.
Yeah.
What books of these would you read? Good Omens, A Song of Fire and Ice, The Jungle Book, A Wrinkle in Time, The Stars, My Destination, The Art of War, Good Night Moon, and I Have No Mouth and I Must Scream.
These are really good choices. I'm torn between A Song of Fire and Ice. It actually reminds me of Nora Roberts. Or A Wrinkle in Time, or The Art of War. So I'm going to go Sun Tzu, The Art of War, because I'm really about that philosophy.
I like that. Okay. Where would you take your Valentine on her first date? The zoo. I love animals. Laser tag. Into the darkness and chaos. It's quite lovely this time of year. The planetarium. I'd have to check to see if I have time before committing to a date. The medieval fair. And love, 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 love. I don't know what that last one means.
Again, torn. I've done laser tag as a first date before, super fun. Or Darkness of Chaos. I am Infinite Chaos, depending on the day. And then I've been to Scarborough Fair in Texas. So I'm going to switch it up, and I'm going to say the Medieval Fair.
All right, Medieval Fair. I have no idea how many questions there are. I'm going into this blind. When it comes to deciding where your loyalties lie, who do you side with in the realm? The Magistrate is on this side of the coin. Paladins have the best goals for the realm's future. Destroy it all, or I only align with those who follow love.
Period. That last one.
There you go. You've just come home after a day of battling for the realm. What do you do to relax? Lie outside and stare up at the stars. Relax in the living room with my pets. Work on improvements to my equipment. Listen to heavy metal music in my room. And take a nap and dream about love.
It's not a select all.
I know.
So I'm going to say living room with my pets.
There you go. That's pretty good. I've been doing that a lot here recently. My cat just got out of surgery and he's just all about like comfort right now. So, you and your Valentine go out for a drink. What are you having? An iced coffee. No, wait, a hot one. Milkshake with a cherry on top. A unicorn frappuccino. Wow, that's branded answer right there. Water. It's
Tiny tea.
water. It's for it's eternal. Energy drink or the blood of my enemies.
I don't know. The blood of my enemies sounds tasty, but I'm going to go with water. It's eternal.
It is. It is. I've got 3 bottles of it next to me here. It's also kind of warm up here, so it's for my health and survival. Okay, here we go. That wasn't too bad. All right, your Valentine is Imani. While her temperature is subject to change, she's always got your back. Dragon and all. I can get behind dragons. Do you ever play as Imani?
I absolutely love Imani. I've not mastered her yet. I think level 30 is like the mastery, but she does fire, ice, and her ultimate is turning into a dragon. And considering I'm Year of the Dragon, it's super fitting. Love it.
That's very fitting. They're also, I'm a kind of a Pokemon Go nerd that is just recently came back into it because I didn't have time before. And they have just recently released a Pokemon called Drampaw, which is half dragon, half grandpa, and he looks like he's made out of cotton candy. It's a good Year of the Dragon.
Oh, yeah.
There's a lot.
Oh, yeah.
A lot going on. So I feel like this is the story right here. I mean, we could talk about all your other different losses, like, family and job and whatnot, but it sounds like to me that this is one of those losses that doesn't necessarily come with a physical loss. This is a loss of self-esteem. This is a loss of security.
Death inside.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah. Which some people believe that emotional loss is something that we can just kind of bolster up and just get over. A lot of times they tell people what you were already doing. Hold it inside, deal with it on your own, go in the bathroom and cry. We don't want to see it. We don't want to hear it. And that's some bullshit. My goodness, Selena. All right. So how many jobs had gone through? Yeah.
Last year? Okay, so that was the height of my downfall, I guess. Originally started 2022 March. I was working at McDonald's the night that I relapsed.
Mm-hmm.
Went to work the next day like nothing happened. I was unhappy, so I ended up I wanted to switch it up, so I went to a gas station. Worked there for a month. Hated it. Absolutely. And it was on the wrong side of town. Doesn't matter where I live. You know what the wrong side of town is.
I
So
understand.
then I tried to go back to healthcare, caregiver. Did that. I mean, over seven. I want to say 7 or 8 jobs in the past year and a half. And it just got to the point where I'm tired of trying. I'm tired of going through the interview process. If the company does not align, and what I was proving the most was that the company, their mission statement should be what they stand by. And
Right.
oftentimes it's not. Like, it doesn't matter where I worked, but like when they push you to work over 16 hours and you know it's not right, but you still do it. You know what I mean? You're not standing by
Right.
your mission statement.
No, I've been there, especially when people start looking at the amount of support that they have in their business. They start thinking less about the mission statement, thinking about the bottom lines, and that starts hurting the crew and or whoever. Yeah. Um. So out of all of those, just wondering, you just carry on the conversation. What do you think? What was the one job that you lost where you're like, I did not want to lose that job?
I don't even know if I should touch base on the actual name, but it was called. I was
Okay.
trained to basically run a type of be the assistant. I worked directly with the CEO. I worked directly with the lady who ran and set everything up. I was PRN. I covered
Uh-huh.
everything. And from that, I went to the opposite because I lost 5 clients in a matter of 2 months to death because they're old, they're
Sure.
elderly.
Sure.
And I got really sad and I was like, I'm tired of that. Let's go for something completely different. So I went and I worked at an adult bookstore for 3 weeks and I was going to become a store manager. And I was training and learning all that. But if I have an addictive personality, that might not have been the best choice for me,
Maybe
which I
not.
found out very quickly, less than a month before I was asked to quit.
Oh man. So you're just kind of free falling, wheeling around, trying to grab anything you could hold on to, huh?
And people give me the chance, like the fact that I could have ran a whole store as a store manager, the
Sure.
fact that I could have, it's insane how much potential I have and how terrible I applied it, you know?
Hey, there's something to be said for being honest with yourself at least, you know? Just saying it's like, oh man, I'm better than that. The first time, I know this is small cookies in comparison to your whole story, but like the first time I ever ran into anything like that, and this is seriously, this pales in comparison, but I can't stop myself. I failed my first ever class in high school, and it was history. Still hate history. I'm not upset.
Opposite. I
Yeah.
hate history, but I'm good at it.
Well, you see, I was good at that too. All I had to do was do the damn homework and actually do the work. And so I had the same teacher again the next year, made all A's, and she just looked at me in disappointment as she handed me my last grade. She's like, "Why didn't you just do this the first time? Mr. LeBlanc, you're so much better than this." And she was like one of those like old school teachers, like if she could hit people with rulers, she would have. And I was just like, "Sorry, Dr. Green." But that was my first taste of ever realizing that people actually watch you apply yourself. You know, sometimes people think that you're not being watched, or sometimes the opposite. People think that you're being watched. People watch you too much. Um,
It's a very
but
fine line between paranoia and reality.
yeah,
And like universe sees it all,
exa-
every stage.
do you think that
Eventually,
do you think at a certain point that you were having blinders on to everybody else? Like you were just thinking everybody else is seeing me try my best. Nobody's seeing the darker side of what's happening to me right now.
not necessarily like that. I think that people were only amplifying the darker aspects. You know, in some ways, in some form or fashion, people saw everything that I was doing, but they were manipulating it to their own advantage and or, what they could get out of it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the nature of humans, the human condition. And it hurts whenever you're an empath, which is what I kind of declare myself as. I've reached the point where like I can kind of connect and make people feel things just by talking to them, just by being on the phone or being in video. And it's really hard, but I've learned how to control that to a point where I've learned a lot. It's a lot of chakra work. I'll just put it to you that way. A lot of stuff.
Uh, well, what about support during those times? Was there anybody who was constantly in your corner this entire time?
The people that actually are destroying your life are actually the ones also saving them simultaneously. And when you think that your family, they should have your back. Sure, they prayed for you to get up off the streets, but that's the same family member that is now evicting me. You know what I mean? Condemning me back to the streets that I was saved from. So it's very ironic that the people that are actually there for me will bring me a pack of cigarettes, will be like, hey, hang in there. Hey, got this, are the very people that I truly learned myself with.
Right. You were telling me a little bit about your current situation before we going in here, and um, have to say, you're you admit the fact that you got a problem with addiction. Does and get a chance. Know that I'm asking this after watching my parents do a whole bunch of stuff under their own addictions. And so at this point, I'm asking out of curiosity because I'm never going to get the chance to ask my own parents. Um, how much of a pull when things get dark and down? How much of a pull and what does that pull feel like? Does your addiction give on you in times of strife and stress?
It's like the abyss, doth, and the Kabbalistic terms.
Hmm.
It's like fully being aware that I could just literally fall backwards and go. And the pull on it, it's so strong that I have to literally practice grounding myself. I have to literally stomp my foot on the ground and say no to myself. Like
Sure.
today, for instance, was a terrible day. And the universe had my back whenever I wasn't strong enough. So I, once again, remain sober and clean. And I am so much stronger for it. The fact that I almost let somebody down to that very point where it's like I either feel morbid or I'm gonna do something about it. And
Right.
instead, I'm here talking to somebody about it, and it's like so therapeutic. Way better than getting high. Way better than drinking. And I don't know. It's perfect what I'm going through right now. It sucks.
I don't know how many times I'm going to get a chance to say this. It seems like it's happened. This is my fifth podcast I've done so far for this season, and it seems like this comes up every time. That anxiety and problems, the stuff that you're holding on in the inside, seem and look so much smaller once you finally get them out of your mouth and show them to people. It's you show them this little thing that has been eating you up inside, and it doesn't necessarily, it doesn't cure you. God no, but sharing that with somebody, it's it's as effective as therapy, depending on how good your therapist is. I feel like my I feel like my therapist is pretty good and she does more than just listen to me. But sometimes, Jesus, that's all you need. Well, I'm glad.
Best advice that I got was actually from I got kicked out of quantum reality shifting. And I paid $50 for this piece of advice, which then he refunded 3 weeks in. He said that my critical failure was looking at the world or looking at others as if they were broken. My mindset, if I wanted to change my reality, needed to change because it's a reflection of the self. If I look at somebody else like they're broken, then obviously there's something wrong with me for not being able to heal them. So
Right.
when I changed that mentality, my whole world, well, I might still be dealing with problems, my whole world has changed forever.
That sounds like that would be very much a thing that you would have to keep up, just through, willpower and probably affirmations. You seem like somebody who really believes in affirmations, like putting that out there and living what you're putting out there.
Standing by what I do, even if it's poo. That rhymed. I did not intend on that.
Well, you did mention earlier that you've written a book of poetry. I'm sure that's just a quality like example of the stuff that's in there as well. I mean, think about it. Poo is a very ubiquitous word. It could rhyme with a lot of different things. All right. So when I was writing these questions, I thought that it was a loss of spirituality, that you had found yourself on an agnostic plane or something different. But you said it was a circle. It was maybe not a perfect circle.
Bravo.
Shout out to Perfect Circle, but
I love, yeah.
I love Purple Circle. Like it came across my Spotify the other day. I was like, I totally forgot you existed. Thank you for coming back.
I actually heard them a month or two ago. That's weird.
Yeah.
Cool.
Maybe they're coming back. We just don't know it. So let's talk about spirituality for a second. Would you call the way that you feel about God and the universe a role in coping? Or is it a way of life that has spawned other coping mechanisms? Tell me about what spirituality means to you.
Uh, Now it is transforming into basically a lifestyle. As I stated, I've studied many different world religions and practices, starting from, I was trying to be Buddhist when I was 15. That was my goal. That was actually my
It's
first
hard
path.
to do as a teen.
I joined an open circle because of my dad, and I dedicated myself for a year and a day to studying as above, so below principles. Through that, I watched Zeitgeist. Through that, I decided, wow, mind blown. And then I started studying the Hermetic Principles, read Kabbalion, read 1984 multiple times, Brave New World, and I kind of developed my own. My dad played a devil's advocate, by the way, because he's an old goat, and he would challenge me, and we would have debates. Not all of them were healthy, but we debated because he wanted me to develop a really strong sense of self. And it's kind of Nordic in practice where it's a lifestyle. Like
Okay.
you say it, you better put your money where your mouth is. And so when I reached the point where I wanted to truly know thyself internally in
Hmm.
terms of the darker aspects of shadow work, what I applied was over 17 years of mental preparation. And so there are many times where I feel like I could have easily not been here today. But because of my ability to think quick on my feet, I am here today. And it's amazing. And it only strengthens, however weak my application on life itself, it only strengthens my internal bond with my spiritual side. So I think I'm doing really good. I think on the right track. It took me doing a year and a day, being a part of an open circle. I was a part of a coven, Wiccan, Gardnerian, or Alexandrian in base. I was taught by a fourth generation, third degree British traditional witch. She was our
Wow.
coven leader, and my dad was the high priest. I lived with the open heart, open circle high priest and high priestess. I took care of them. They were disabled. I was the maiden. I would set up and break down. I was a bard. I could play guitar. I could drum. It was some of the best times of my life. And when I lost that and where I moved now is like a Bible Belt of Texas, West Texas. Like, I can't apply that now.
That is
And so
such a
Christianity,
that is
it's so
such a
crazy.
shift.
It's a movie that you would never believe. It's a love story that might not ever get told of how I found God.
Wow. That
Which,
that is amazing. I mean, even I fully believe that what you see in religion in life, especially as you get older, becomes an amalgamation of all different types of things, makes the universe make sense to you. And it's even more special if you realize that there's only a handful of people in the world that may see it the same way as you do. But for coming from those different layers, from being the maiden, the bard, from being the parts of those circles, and then coming back to, you said Texas, right? Coming back
yeah,
to coming back.
born and raised, but
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
I was born in Oklahoma, but raised in the Carolinas. But then coming back to that, obviously your relationship with God can't be the exact same one as it was. I mean, you've seen and done too much.
I tried to destroy that entire duality. Like I effectively did.
Yeah,
I watched my old go to the dad do, you know what I mean? I'm not going to get into that because I don't want to twist it into something where it's perceived negatively because it's not. It's all a part of truly understanding that there's one source, in my opinion, and the religious paths are all branches to that huge tree. And however you visualize it is your thought form. So the way I visualize and connected to God whenever I found him,
sure.
it was Bob Marley, One Love. And it's a joke in my head. He doesn't look a thing like Jesus because he's Bob Marley, dude. Like, it's hilarious to
I
me.
could
Yeah.
subscribe to that actually. I could totally see Jesus as a Bob Marley-esque because I'll be honest with you, I was ne even when I was younger, I was never completely down with white, brown hair, blue-eyed Jesus. Like I
It
never
doesn't,
it doesn't. I even when I was younger, I was like, he came from where and when was this? And he looked very Aryan, evidently. It didn't ever
he
make
brown.
sense.
He brown. Okay, let's just get to he's brown, whatever he is. He
Exactly.
was not, yeah, he was not
Um,
an Adonis.
so so these moments when
Put that part
Adonis,
out.
Adonis, that's great. Uh, so many different things come out in these conversations that I have, and I will probably have hopefully remember Michael. You need to remember this. Have Adonis maybe in the title. I think that would actually
No,
grab some people's attention.
side joke for me,
Yeah,
honest, but don't just cut that part out.
we'll see. We'll see what comes of it off the cutting room floor.
You're you're like a DM. You really are.
You have to be. You have to be. You have religion, you see as your religion, your experience. What other coping mechanisms do you have other than speaking out loud, stomping your foot? Like what else gets you through the times where everything just seems like it's full of loss and shit?
Music, my lineage. I
Okay.
cannot go into detail about this, but in my journey, my dad was adopted. It was a closed case, classified.
Okay.
And one of my deep goals was to find out the true lineage. So I'm not at liberty to talk about that just yet, but it's pretty magical. And music,
Okay.
drumming,
You,
and guitar.
I'm curious. So can you tell me after we stop recording?
Absolutely.
Fantastic.
It's a work in progress. It's a life's passion
I will.
that I cannot talk about just yet. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
Especially
Gotcha. Well, I will hold it to myself, and no one will ever know unless you give me the go ahead to, or if you want to maybe do it on a future episode or something. Um,
episode.
Music is huge for me as well, and I'm one of those people who call music therapy. I mean, a lot of people subscribe to that idea, and I used to call it audio morphine when I was working as a restaurant manager for 14 years. And they gave me the closing shift most of the time because I had a good eye for detail, and I was also a department head, so there was a lot of times where closing also meant handling the inventory. But I would tell people, I was like, all right, look, if you're going to listen to your own music, put it in earphones or earphones. Yeah, that's not right.
Earbuds.
Headphones.
Yeah.
Yeah, headphones at the time. Earbuds weren't necessarily all that thing. The Apple Pods were iPods, EarPods, whatever. They were a thing. You can tell I'm not an Apple boy at all.
I'm not either. Yeah.
But I would take my stereo or Bluetooth speaker or whatever I had at the time and put it in the office door facing out towards the kitchen and just blast whatever it was. And the moment that the music started, I felt the anxiety not loosen, just all the stress and everything out of the day. And I would go after my parents died. I would seek out the songs that would actively make me emote. Like there are times where I'm gonna cry regardless because I got no problem crying, but sometimes just yeah. Emotionally constipated, I think I called myself once because I was just like I feel it just won't come out. And then it was I think a year after my dad passed, and I was listening to Blue October, Hate Me, and yeah, I can see the look on your face right now. So I mean that song it doesn't even necessarily like accurately reflect the pain of like my situation is not the same as the songs, but my
You
God,
can apply it.
the raw emotion just takes everything in here, and then the next thing I know, I'm screaming along. There's tears in my eyes. God, I love that song. Every time it comes along, I reblog it or repost it wherever I happen to find it. And I'm like, everybody else needs to feel the pain I'm feeling right now. I mean, I think that's a great story for what I'm hoping to be a first episode with you. I mean, if you ever want to like talk more about like the times where like I feel like this was just like a 45-minute introduction to something that can just get packed later, but we'll see. We'll see. But there's so much I want to ask you, but there's so much time that I don't have.
Sorry if I've overloaded you.
No,
'Cause
it's
I barely
okay.
even touched the surface of the
Yeah,
iceberg.
I know,
Yeah.
I know. But no, I think this right here is a interesting enough story. The fact that, you have, there's stories of loss and struggle and then change. You're not the first person to have changed their view on life in general and move forward. That's in a different fashion than what they were. I've come to see that a couple of times now, which is I knew going into this podcast that I was going to find so many different styles of humanity that I had just
The way I
not
framed it in
seen.
my head, I think I posted it on my page. I was like, it's not Skid Row, but it might have came close. You know what I mean? It is kind of like a documentary, but it's not. It's a conversation.
It is.
And what I like the most about it is that there's room for growth. There's room for a continuation, a continuum.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be forced, whatever feels natural. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
whatever stopping point you get to is whatever stopping point I take. Okay, so my question for you would be, what made you want to create this podcast
Well,
specifically, if you care to share?
yes. God, I care to share. It's only fair after asking so many people so many other questions. So quick lowdown. I've told this story before, but not to you. I lost my mom in 2016, and from there I started doing videos after I would take walks, clearing my mind, and just talk to people. It was called Sittin with Michael at the time. And I went from there and decided to start doing YouTube videos, and they were doing okay. But then I wanted to figure out how I was doing better, and somebody said you could do better doing short form videos. And I was like, all right. And of course, this is around when TikTok was taking off, around 2020. And so I started doing those, and yeah, it did take off. I found a better audience that way. Took that, applied it other places, finally became Sitting with You because it could go over my whole platform. And then, yeah, I think it was shortly after my dad died, which has been a couple of years, 2 or 3 years now. I try not to put a noticeable pin on the calendar for that. The days will come. I try not to remember how long it was. Um, and I was talking to a lot of other people who were talking about loss, and there was a lot of stress that wasn't being handled right. And it was before I was in therapy that I started talking to other people and starting hearing all of these different stories. Because people want to commiserate. Or the horrible thing is like, I'm so sorry, and then they just stare at you. That's the worst. But uh, I knew that I wanted to do a podcast before then, but it was kind of aimless. And then the more that I had these conversations, and then it was before I went to therapy, I can say that, that I was just like, I want to talk to other people about how they're dealing with it. Because people kind of get uncomfortable with me when I make dead parent jokes, but I'm in that club. My parents did die. Other people are making dead parent jokes and their parents aren't dead. That means that either A, their relationship's really messed up, or B, they just don't give two shits about death. Um, but for me, it was more along the lines of it was my coping, right? And then I realized that not everybody copes the same way. And then I really wanted to find out how people are coping. But coping and grief changes different people in so many different wild permutations. And I want other people out there. The more I thought about it, I was like, other people out there are struggling, being told not to cry, being told to just shovel their emotions in, or, they're going through some really weird symptoms that people don't really necessarily think about due to either self-medication or there was already an imbalance in their life and the grief is coming out and say, like I've heard of people like, just like rhythmically pulling out their hair or I wanted to know those stories and I want other people to hear those stories too, because it can't just be about about helping me if I'm going
Like the
to.
essence of Patch Adams, in my opinion.
Okay, I will take that. I've got
Yeah.
my shoes are humongous. So that makes sense. And then I found out right before I started recording that God, what's his name? Anderson Cooper was doing a podcast about grief, but his was about learning how to handle all the things that he hasn't handled. Like what grief, what how that actually means and how that is shaping his life and how it could be better. So I was like, okay, all right, it's different enough. I'm not I'm not stepping in the same places that other people are. But even if he
Yeah.
did, there are so many different stories.
It's a spectrum. It's
It is.
definitely a spectrum.
It is. Well, Celine, this has been amazing. We don't have
Ditto.
to like hang up right now because I've got a while before I've got to head home and I'd love to just, talk with you in general, but this podcast can't keep running too long. Again, thank you so much, Celine. Where do you want people to find you? Do you want to plug anything that you want to plug?
Celine, Amber Wolf, Christina, Ashley Dansby, or Infinite Chaos, depending on who you get that day.
And do you mind if I put your link tree in our? Okay, I'll get that link tree from you. It'll be in the description. And I've been your host, Michael LeBlanc. Even if you missed next month's episode, well, still, it's your loss. I'll talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.